Read It. What's the time you saw an a-hole kid get what they deserve? Story 1. A 10-year-old kid dumped a cup of water on my 18-year-old brother to show off for his friends. My brother responded by sticking the kid head first into an empty trash can, except it wasn't empty. It had a foot of rainwater mixed with a decade of garbage drippings in the bottom. The can tipped and the kid comes out soaked, wailing and smelling of sewage. He ran home and never spoke to nor f***ed with my brother again. For the record, if he knew the can was full of water, he wouldn't have dumped the kid in there. Story 2. The little demon that pushed my daughter down and stole her pinwheel toy from her at the park completely biffed it into the slide running away. I chuckled. I won't even pretend like I didn't. Kid was there unsupervised and terrorizing the younger kids. They calmly walked up, smirking after he was laying there a bit winded, and grabbed my daughter's toy back from the ground beside him. Story 3. My mom told me the story of when I was a kid, I think around 4 years old. I was at soccer practice and we got a water break. The team had ongoing practices for all age groups at the same time. Anyways, I was in line to drink water when an older, probably around 10, kid decided to cut in front of me. My mom said, and I quote, "He looked straight up at him and punched him right in the marbles." The kid apparently fell to the floor and I walked right over him to get my water. I wish I remember this. I wish this was recorded. Story 4. Had a punk neighbor, 12, that would consistently taunt and tease my little sister, 7. Neighbor boy decides one day to throw a large, small baseball bat-sized stick in my yard and tell my little sister to fetch. She surprisingly goes to get the stick, only to whack him across the face with it. She has learned well, to say the least. Story 5. I was working at a Pizza Hut at the time. Some kid around age 10 or so went into the men's restroom and pooped in the urinal, then proceeded to smear it all over the place. We knew it was a kid due to it not being very busy that day, and a coworker spotted the mess right after the kid left the bathroom. We weren't sure what to do, but the manager decided to tell the parents. The father was pissed. He made the boy clean it up. He stood over him, yelling at him, and made him clean it all. The boy was crying, but, the kid deserved it. He was old enough to know you don't do that crap. He wasn't mentally impaired. He was just an a-hole. We were all glad the dad stepped up. Otherwise, we would have had to clean it. That's Father of the Year parenting right there. Story 6. I was around 8 years old in a jumping castle, and this random kid bounces over and asks how old I was. After telling him, he immediately started punching me in the face, and I ran away. I turned back to see if he had given chase, but instead, he jumped off awkwardly and had broken his ankle. I laughed quite hard. Story 7. When I was working at an airsoft field, we had parties come in all the time. One party, the birthday kid was being a total to his friends, shooting really close, not calling hits, and yelling that he hit people when he never did. So me and my coworker had enough of this kid being a jerk, so we decided to let the boss's son play. He's really competitive and doesn't really know how to take it easy. But on the opposite team, we told him to be really tough on the birthday kid for a game or two to teach him a little lesson. However, the boss's son just went nuts after the birthday kid shot him in the back of the head really close. Typically, you tell someone to surrender and they just go back to respawn. Needless to say, the boss's son got really pissed and just lit the kid up point blank, full auto. The birthday kid started bawling and the party left early. My boss just asked if he was being a little and when we said yes, he just shrugged. None of us cared. Story 8. When I was in my mid-teens, a little neighbor girl about 5 to 6 years younger than me came to my door. She accused me of putting my name on her sidewalk. It had recently been done, except, of course, that wasn't my name on the sidewalk. That not being enough, she then accused me of using a fake name on the sidewalk so I wouldn't get caught. I asked her why, because that would defeat the purpose to which she came up with this gem. "I'm going to tell my dad you hit me." No such thing had happened. Then she turns to run off and do just that. Right face first into the sharp stone and stucco wall, hurting her lips, nose, and cheek pretty bad. She told her dad I did it. He came to my door and calmly asked me what had happened, and I told him. Yeah, that's something she'd do. Story 9. I was driving a fire truck back from an all-night fire about 7 a.m. This truck's diesel mixture was a bit rich, so if you sat for a while and gunned it, you might get smoke from the exhaust. As I approached a highway from the residential street I was on, there were 6 middle school kids waiting for the school bus in the corner. As some kids do, they stand or walk in the street and refuse to move for cars. As I came to the intersection, one little clown looks at me smugly and does not move, causing me to have to go into the oncoming lane at the intersection. I patiently waited until I could make my turn onto the highway, then gunned the crap out of the fire truck's diesel engine, causing a thick blob of black thick smoke to come out the exhaust, which was mid-truck pointed right at the kids. They were coated in thick oily diesel fumes, especially Mr. Smugface. And last I saw, they were halfway down the block on the sidewalk running with me on the road, spewing smoke after them. Mr. Smug looked at me with terror in his little half-developed mind. Story 10. One day playing at the park when we were kids, my bratty neighbor decided to use her sharp nails to scratch the crap out of all the other girls. We were all under 10 at the time. I don't remember being scratched myself, but my sister had some awful red streaks down her back. My mom was livid and went to tell off the girl's mom about her daughter's crazy behavior. It turned into a shouting match. I guess my mom won because the other mom went into her house and came back a few minutes later with her daughter's nail trimmings. She gave them to my mom. Ugh. Story 11. I grew up in a really small town where all of us kids went to school together, K-12, unless you went to the parochial school. All through elementary school, this girl who lived down the street from me was a total witch. She was taller than most of the boys and would bully anybody she felt was beneath her. One day, coming home on the bus, she was picking on this boy in my grade. We were a year younger than her. He wasn't an albino, but pretty close. White hair, really pale skin, thick glasses, and his parents saddled him with the name Clarence. Kid just couldn't catch a break. Anyway, this girl was leaning over the back of her seat and in his face the whole ride home, calling him names, making fun of his glasses, clothes, etc. A few of us tried to get her to stop, but she was relentless. Poor Clarence just sat there, his face getting redder and redder, the occasional tear sliding down his face. When the bus came to a stop, he slid to the end of the bench seat, calmly stood up and turned to her. Then faster than anybody could ever take a breath, he hauled off and did a full arm swing and swung her in the face with his lunchbox. His metal lunchbox. Then he just turned into the aisle and slowly walked off the bus. They say when an EOD has a bad day, he turns into pink mist. Her nose had a bad day. She spent the next 3 months with varying degrees of black eyes as a result of the initial injury, and subsequent surgeries to repair her nose. That was the last time she bullied anyone. And the best part of the whole story is that Clarence never got in trouble for it. Story 12. Used to coach youth lacrosse in Georgia. Volunteer hours through my college team. Had a kid whose name, I kid you not, was Harsh. Anyways, I had the elementary school-age kids for practice one night with Harsh. We went through a drill with a weaker kid who ended up costing his team the point. They get to the end of the line for the drill, and Harsh, a 5th grader, hits the 2nd grader in the helmet with his stick. I stop the practice, line up all the kids, and make them do 30-yard down and back sprints, and make Harsh call out every sprint, and every kid has to call out, "Thank you, Harsh," instead of whatever number sprint they were on. After 10 of them, I restarted the practice. The other kids roughed him up to a pulp, messed the out of him. It was awesome. Story 13. I'm a part of my school's football team, and as always, there's one kid where his mom pretty much bought him into the program. Well, this kid thinks he's the best since sliced bread. Let it be known he was possibly one of the worst linebackers I've ever seen in my life. Well, one day this kid says crap to an offensive lineman about his weight. The lineman never even talked to this clown before this point. The clown goes back to his position with a smug look, and the lineman, a guard, this will explain how this matters in this situation. He's the one on the right. Obviously pissed, goes and gets into position without saying a word. Well, the next play was a run into the hole that the guard was in. The linebacker stands back to evaluate the play, which was really his way of chickening out of making a tackle. Well, the lineman took him up as a block and completely threw him face up into the ground 5-ish yards, around 4.572 meters away, and he landed on the ground with an audible clap from his helmet hitting the ground. He stayed on the ground for 10 minutes, and he got a moderate concussion and a broken rib. Needless to say, he didn't try out the next year. No one misses him. Story 14. Tim was in an awful accident and almost lost his life. He got really messed up at the age of 9. He missed 2 years of school. When he came back, he joined my class. Mentally, he was there, but not. Academically, he was fine, but socially, he had a hard time making friends. Had an almost non-functioning left arm, tremors, and a slightly different walk due to his left leg being injured. Made him an easy target. One morning before school started, Jeff, who was one of the primary agitators, really lets into him. It was almost 30-something years ago, and I can't remember what set him off, but Tim grabs Jeff's neck with a bad left arm. We found out the grip was just fine, and took his good right and swung at him uninterrupted for a good 60 seconds. Being 2 years older gave him a distinct reach advantage. I wish this had an effect on everybody and they would leave him alone. I remember my 5th grade teacher shutting down class one day and chewing us out about Tim, but it did no good. It was back to normal the next day. Junior high. There's a reason I don't talk to those clowns anymore. Story 15. A guy who used to pick on me real mercilessly in high school got busted for selling narcotics in the high school parking lot. Senior year. Far as I know, he's still in prison since he was over 18. Held back a few times at the time of the arrest. Right out of high school into prison? Probably a bit harsh, but some would say he got what he deserved. Story 16. I knew this kid around my area who was a certified snitch. He got caught doing something illegal, I won't say what, and instead of owning his crap, he ratted on like 3 people. They all got charges and he got off scot-free. The kid didn't do anything because they would most definitely get assault charges for retaliating. Well, about a week later, the snitch is riding the school bus on the way home. On his bus was a mentally challenged kid, who was sitting in front of the snitch. So the mentally challenged kid asks the snitch a question. Who knows what? Probably something observational. And the dude is just like, "Leave me alone." All this other So he turns around and then asks him something else, and Snitch punches the slow kid in the mouth. Well, the starting linebacker of the high school was directly behind Snitch. Linebacker promptly grabbed the Snitch by the collar so high up his head was hitting the ceiling, and slapped the out of him like 35 plus times. Sat his butt down and told him if he ever touched another mentally challenged kid again, he'd be getting buried. Sweet, sweet vengeance. Story 17. I played soccer my freshman year of high school, and my team was one of the better ones in our division. There was a team from another school who we had heard would always try and cheat their way to a win, faking injuries, trying to injure you when the refs weren't looking, etc. And finally, we got our chance to play them. Their team was playing man-to-man defense, so the same girl was guarding me basically the entire game. Every time she would get close to me, she would dig her fingernails into me. So by the time we got to a break, my arms were completely messed up. I told my coach what was going on, and he went and mentioned it to the refs. They said they would watch out for it, but when play resumed, she kept right on doing it. The refs continued to not notice it. Finally, I was pretty fed up. At one point, she came and stood behind me, but also slightly to my right. As soon as she reached out to touch me, I popped her in the stomach with my elbow as hard as I could. She, of course, fell to the ground and pitched a big fit. They ended up stopping the game. When the refs came over, she was being very dramatic, rolling around and writhing in pain, and she told them this whole sob story of what had happened. I'm sure it did hurt a little, because I meant it to, but it certainly didn't hurt as much as she was making it seem. The refs went ahead and red-carded me, though, despite our previous complaints about this girl. So I went and sat up in the stands with some of the parents. By the time the play resumed, she was magically feeling good enough to play again, except this time, she was guarding my friend Kay, who was much more awesome and less patient than I am. This girl starts doing the same thing to Kay that she had been doing to me, but Kay only put up with this for about 45 seconds before she turned around and popped her one right in the face. The girl ended up having to sit out the rest of the game because her nose was hurting pretty badly. And Kay was red-carded as well and got to come hang out in the stands with me. It was, of course, awesome watching Kay punch the girl in the face, but the aftermath was awesome as well. Number one, we won the game. Actually, we beat that team every subsequent year of high school as well. It was found out after the game that one of the refs was actually related to one of the girls on the other team, so they actually downgraded Kay and I's red card to yellow cards. And number three, the next year we played the same team, Kay managed to catch the girl's eye before the game started and give her a really menacing look. We saw the girl go talk to her coach right after that, and she ended up sitting out that entire game. We never saw her after that. Oh, and we won states that year as well. Story 18. It was second grade and I just moved to a new school. I was waiting in line to play Foursquare when some jerk fourth grader cuts in front of me. Still being a shy kid, I sheepishly said, "You cut me." In an instant, he replied, "Your mom." Never before had the universe seen the fury which I unleashed in this little kid for what I thought at the time to be a legitimate insult to my mother. He ended up in the nurse's office for the rest of the day. Since I was a new kid, he didn't know anything about me and no one spoke up about it, so I never got in trouble for it. Story 19. This kid who was a pretty big bully in my high school, he was a little scrawny clown who would try to pick fights with anyone. The nerd people, the quiet people, teachers, girls 3 years older than him, anyone. At any freaking time of the day. Gym class, lunchtime, after school, etc. He just thought he was the shit, because his 2 or 3 friends were bigger kids. Grade 12, I was at a 4-way traffic stop just before the highway, and I saw a car rear-end another one. It was him driving and his older brother in the passenger seat. It was some scary-looking middle-aged dude who came out of the front car and started yelling and taunting the bully dude. I was like, no freaking way. He gets his car smashed up, then gets completely put in his place? No one was injured, but I was like, honestly, the last 4 years, at the very least you got your car smashed up. You deserve that crap. Story 20. There was this kid who used to annoy me and my friends growing up. He was years younger than us and didn't just want to play with us. We played sports games with the kids years younger than us. Age was never an issue for us. He just wanted to annoy us. We'd play all different games, street hockey, baseball with a tennis ball or wiffle ball, etc. He'd constantly watch, waiting for his moment to jump in and mess the game up. We tried ignoring him at first, but there's only so many places to play in our neighborhood, so we couldn't really go to too many other places to play. After a while, we realized ignoring him wouldn't be enough. He had too much fun with it. We started trying to annoy him back, throw the ball at him, stuff like that. He always laughed as he dodged them, but would start wailing when we hit him. He went running home and his parents hated us. One day, his father finally walked up to us and told us to relax and stop bullying his kid. While the kid had that smug grin behind him knowing he's screwing you over, the father was actually reasonable enough to say he doesn't know who's telling the truth because he wasn't there. He asked us to ask the kid to leave or at least go elsewhere. We would go elsewhere, but the brat would follow us and annoy us constantly. We kind of got to the point where, as bad as it may have looked, we'd do something to him. He'd run crying home and then we'd leave to find somewhere else to play. After a while, we were playing something and he was there annoying us. His father drove by and happened to see the kid annoying us and slammed his brakes and just parked his car in the middle of the road. He absolutely tore into this kid. This kid was bawling his eyes out. His father made him apologize to us and apologize to us himself since he realized it was his kid causing all the issues. We never had another issue with the kid again. We all laugh whenever we saw him and he'd just get pissed and run off to probably annoy somebody else. Story 21. When I was in elementary school, this girl, going to call her A, that was in my class since the first grade was beyond two-faced. She had a face for every person in the class, and she needed to be liked by everyone. When she was with you, she was your best friend. But when she wasn't, she would talk about you. If there was no crap to talk about, she would make it up. Anyways, one day in the gym, the 3-girl popular group in my grade decided they were sick of her crap. We had co-ed gym with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders all together. One of the girls waited until the gym teacher asked if we had any questions about the instructions he had just given us, and she goes, "No questions, but if you're in the girls' locker room, watch out what you touch because A doesn't wash her hands after she changes her tampons." It humbled the crap out of A, and I can't remember her ever being the same ever again. She lost friends and grabbed herself a reputation that day that I don't think ever really went away. She was a gorgeous girl, but she had a very ugly inside. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this next video. The YouTube algorithm really thinks you like it.